So maybe a way to wrap up is to think about, well, this is all rather heretical. This is all rather against the grain of what we think of traditional business continuity planning. Business impact analysis, risk assessments, these things, we're not really spending our time on them. You're talking about high-level strategic planning. Why go against the grain? Why is this kind of an approach?
Well, the grain was made 20, 25 years ago when really just-in-time processing and all that other stuff really was becoming vogue because of the internet, etc. But plans were written by, we know the way a business should run, and so therefore we're going to write these detailed plans based on the way a business should run, and therefore should run in an emergency. This is great. How many of those businesses work that way? And again, every department within that business, we've become so complex, and with the internet and with the fact that all the vendors that we use and all the customers we serve all want, sub-second response time, or they need to give us sub-second response time, depending, has changed the game. Okay, so deviations from this standard, this is the way we run our business, are very common these days. People are just going with what's happening at the very moment, and not in a very structured way. Businesses aren't normally being run in a very structured way in production. So to turn around and come up with a very structured way of running them in design, although noble, is secondary to saying, let's again take a look at those functions in a business continuity plan, strategic planning, risk of what, and do all those in production. If those are all run in production for the day-to-day production decisions that are being made, well, then you're in great shape as a DR person, as a business continuity person.
So the complexity of today's organizations, the complexity, the speed at which they run and adapt and change doesn't lend itself to a long plan, doesn't lend itself to a lot of detail, to starting with a business impact analysis and risks. We need to sort of flip that around.
To boil the ocean of coming up with a 3-inch thick document that will do everything for everything is not going to work, because that sort of analysis paralysis isn't going to work in production for most companies today.
And so the business continuity planner then can also remain very flexible. What was red and yellow this quarter might be green next quarter. We might not care about that system or that process anymore, because in 3 months we've changed. And keeping all those documents up to date is a lot harder than keeping the strategic plan up to date.
And that's the other thing. You always get that question from executive management. Well, how often do I have to update this? They say once a year, but as far as I'm concerned, sir or ma'am, you should do it whenever anything in your department changes. So if that's less than every year, then simply look at the document, rubber stamp it, and let it go. Knowing full well, you and hopefully the executive, is that things change every other minute.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks. And then they unfortunately get stuck. Well, not unfortunately, because that's what they're getting paid to do, the big bucks. They will have to continue to hold on to the responsibility of updating that plan as frequently as they need to. Whatever that means.
And so we've come nicely full circle back around to saying, look, if we start with BIA and RA and lots of documents and lots of analysis, we're already behind the 8 ball. We need to be flexible. We need to be adaptable. We need to learn the business. We need to speak to the needs of the executives. And strangely enough, we may end up where we wanted to go in the first place. With very resilient organizations who really can recover from disaster.
Which is what our ultimate goal is, yes.
So Jack Smith, thank you so much for being with me. Jack's article, Strategic Continuity Planning, the First Critical Step. Been fascinating, a really interesting discussion. Jack, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me. Good talking to you.
Thanks.
Thanks, David.